Hey everybody, welcome back to the 6th round post-fight show with me, Zane Simon, coming to you just from the close of UFC Vancouver, De Ridder versus Allen, where what was a pretty great card from the start slowed down terribly over the course of the last three fights to really grind to a halt at the end. No better typified by Reiner De Ridder himself grinding to a halt and his corner having to call the fight between or after the fourth round because he was too exhausted to continue. Which, I got to say, it's not at all what I thought would happen going into that fight. I really figured if somebody was going to fall apart and have their cardio fail them, it would be Allen, especially coming in on reasonably short notice. Especially if De Ridder could get him into a big, hard grappling battle, which he did over and over again. I thought that was going to be the best, most entertaining fight for us and the best fight for De Ridder to have. But he could not maintain that at all. And he wilted in a hurry. The moment he couldn't maintain top position, he wilted pretty badly under Allen. So it ended up being a pretty ugly fight by the end of it. So, yeah, not really a glorious night for the UFC. After the fight, Allen called out Chimaev, not a fight he's going to get. But he puts him right back up in the hunt. So I got to think, given the way that division, now probably the fight for Allen is going to have to be Anthony Hernandez. Whenever Hernandez comes back from injury, they book him versus Brendan Allen instead of the Reiner De Ridder fight. So, because I got to assume that Imavov is next for Chimaev, or Chimaev is going to try to go to light heavyweight or something, or they're going to do a Dricus rematch. I don't know, but it's not. I can't imagine it's going to be Brendan Allen. So yeah, and for De Ridder, after that big win over Robert Whittaker, this is just a really pretty terrible loss to take. So he could easily end up fighting Kyle Bahayo, coming off that loss to Imavov. And I guess he could fight somebody like Dricus, but that doesn't really seem like it makes sense. Most likely a fight with Bahayo or with like Cannonier or Dolidze, God help him. God help us, rather. But yeah. This, like I said, it was too bad because this was a pretty promising fight night to open up. It seemed like it was pretty well booked. I didn't have a lot of expectations for the early fights, but they ended up being great. And then the late fights ended up being just a slog. So let's get to the co-main event then. And a slog that not only that, but also one that feels, especially with De Ridder losing, not all that important. Like I say, Allen called out Chimaev, but this doesn't, De Ridder had the momentum where, like, if he'd put together a really spectacular win over Allen, he might have been able to get a title shot, get in line or jump the line for the belt, whatever. But Allen winning this fight, it doesn't feel like that's a possibility at all. So I don't know. Just doesn't. It closes the card feeling pretty lame. Oh, and I should note, I am here alone solo. Obviously, Eddie is off. Calling fights with Frank Mir tonight at the Brawlers Ball in, I think, Virginia. So he's doing his thing, but we'll see him next week, I'm sure. The how washed is Robert Whittaker question? Yeah, saw that a lot tonight in my live thread. It feels like very, I don't know, can't be a great sign. Yeah, and it could also be, I won't deny this from Doug here, that RDR just fought too many times this year and his body gave out. He obviously pushed to fight a lot. But yeah, it's, either way, like, he needs a big step back, and having to quit on the stool, that's pretty bad. There's not going to be a high profile bounce back for him, I don't feel like. All right, that brings us to a welterweight bout, and really more of a rant for me than a fight to talk about, because Mike Malott punted Kevin Holland in the balls and then kneed him in the balls. I don't care if either of them were intentional or incidental or whatever. That's not important. They were very clear. It was a very clearly severe foul. And Holland clearly could not recover even in the 5 minutes allotted to him. And it basically spoiled the rest of the fight. It spoiled it even more so, given that with a badly injured Kevin Holland in front of him, Mike Malott could not then go out and dominate the rest of the fight. He won it, but it was nothing special. It felt like, you've got a guy badly injured in front of you, and you just are resigned to slogging out another 10 minutes against him. We saw a similar situation earlier in the card with Drew Dober and Kyle Propolic, and that feels like what you do in that situation. You hurt a guy so badly that he is fighting impaired. After that, you go out and you finish him. Even from the beginning, Malott felt like he was fighting somebody he was worried about and afraid of. He seemed like he did not feel confident against Holland, and even with Holland injured, it should have been, he still seemed like he wasn't confident about it. But that being said, that's not my rant. That's not the point. The real point is here, this is a very, very clear instance of the terrible unwillingness to ever wave off a fight as a culture in MMA, and how it just hurts the product overall. I mean, we saw, thankfully, in the main event, René de Ridder could barely get back to his corner, and his corner looked at him and were like, dude, you can't continue. We're calling this. And you know what? That's great. We don't need to see another 5 minutes of Reiner de Ridder getting laid on and beat up from top control. We don't need it. It's not good fighting. It's not good entertainment. When Kevin Holland could not clearly give the ref every intention that he could proceed unimpaired after 5 minutes, the ref should have called that fight right there. Done. When the doctor demanded that Kevin Holland should have, or needed to tell him he could continue, and Holland didn't and wouldn't, the doctor should have called the fight right there. When Holland's corner saw him get hurt that bad and be unable to continue, they should have thrown in the towel and called off the fight right there. Nobody is going to protect a fighter if the fight in MMA, if the fighter themselves isn't willing to quit on their stool. And it's a horrible culture in this sport, because all of these people are supposed to have a responsibility for safety, some kind of responsibility for safety. Your referee, your doctor, your corner, they are all there because a fighter wants to fight. They're going to go in there and they are going to try to fight no matter what. Their paycheck relies on this. Their way, their means of making money, their pride relies on this. You can't put everything on their shoulders and say, you have to quit for us to say it's too much. Kevin Holland's not going to quit. The ref, the doctor, the corner, somebody else should have been like, look, this is clearly no longer a reasonable or fair contest in any way, shape, or form. We're calling it. And yeah, OS Ghost 8222 saying Dan telling him it was DQ loss if he stops was bad and irresponsible. I mean, here's the thing. Him letting it get to a position where it would have been a DQ loss is bad and irresponsible. Realistically, once Holland got back to his stool and did not stop the fight in between the round, did not tell the ref, the official, that he wanted to stop the fight. Once he stood up from his corner to start round 2, then even though the ref called the doctor in, that's still officially Holland continuing the fight. And if he tells the doctor at that point that he can't continue, then it's no longer a direct seen as a direct result of the foul. So you can't call it a no contest. It would have been a DQ basically, or an injury or a TKO loss, a unwillingness to continue. So it is bad, but it's mostly bad that Dan let it get that far. It should have been stopped well before that. It should have been stopped after 5 minutes when Holland did not clearly show he could continue. That should have just been the end of the fight. So that is, that's one of those things that I hate to see it, because MMA has this culture that has permeated the sport for years and years, decades now, that you never stop an MMA fight for anything short of a loss of consciousness. To stop a fight for anything less than that is some kind of crime. And that every fighter, no matter the situation, always has a chance to get back in it, to make it happen, to find a way to win. And it means that essentially there's nothing to protect fighters when they are in severe risk of injury or when they are completely unable to compete. No, the refs all say, oh, we don't want to interfere. Doctors are there, like they're supposed to be there for safety, but realistically, what doctors and officials are there for is they're there to make sure that a commission can keep putting on fights and keep putting on contests that promoters want to go there and want to work with them. They're there to be easy to work with and to make fights to let fights keep happening. That is what they're there for. If they get really into stopping fights and officiating and stepping in and doing the kinds of things that we think, that fans think that they should do, taking points, all that stuff, then the UFC themselves will, turn around and say, like, we're not going to come back here. We don't want to put on fights here because you're difficult to work with. So, the structure there is really puts all the pressure on, be easy to work with, make everything easy, make everything keep flowing. Don't stop fights. Don't cancel anything. And it just, as, Combat Odds HQ here saying 2 people have died in Canada and MMA over the last 2 years. Like, this is how fighters die, is because nobody, when it comes time for somebody to make a really hard decision, everybody in this sport has been trained to pass the buck and not take responsibility. So the Holland thing, I get it. He just got kicked in the balls really hard. It sucks for him. He didn't get really badly hurt. He's going to fight again. It's not a career-threatening or whatever injury, but it's indicative. It's it's the kind of thing that's, you can turn the process for fixing what should have been a very clear, small situation is exactly the same process for fixing a very terrible, life-threatening situation. It's a systemic failure for the sport. So I hate to see it. Mike Malott did himself no favors by dragging that to a decision. The UFC's trying to spin it like, oh, you're a top 15 fighter now. And it's just like, okay, nobody wants to watch you fight, Nobody's going to be showing up for your eventual booking against Daniel Rodriguez or whatever. That seems like the most likely fight they'll pitch him into. I don't know. Just sucked. And for Holland, I mean, it's just weird stuff for Holland. I've always gotten the impression that he fights more to have fun and make money than he does to care about specifically winning or losing. So a lot of his fights end up feeling kind of weird and janky. This obviously is not him having fun or making money, but he'll be back in 2 months, I'm sure, fighting again. That brings us to the third straight stupid fight that felt like a slog at the top of this card. Bantamweight bout. Ayman Zahabi, Marlon Vera. And look, all credit to Ayman Zahabi here. Beating Jose Aldo was already like a career redefining victory for him that made him, that rewrote his position as a action fighter, mid-card action fighter who was Firas Zahabi's brother, into actually the more interesting and more, almost more acclaimed. I mean, I know Firas has GSP to forever hang his hat on, but like beating Jose Aldo, even a washed old Jose Aldo, is amazing for a fighter like Zahabi. And to follow that up with beating Marlon Vera, all credit to Zahabi. He goes out there, he fights hard on the front foot, he fights hard on the back foot. He makes you have to go and beat him with consistent offense in both directions, something even a lot of elite fighters can't do that well. And so even though he's not a top athlete, even though he's not super fast or super powerful or super dynamic, man is making it happen. All credit to him. For Marlon Vera, though, man, it just, like, you put together a minute of offense in round 2 and you nearly nuke Zahabi, and then he just can never put that together again. He's, it never looks like Zahabi has him in any serious trouble, but Vera's fighting the whole time like he's afraid to open up and that Zahabi's about to put him in serious trouble. And then at the end, he's out there acting like he just won. And it's like, yeah, okay, you landed a lot of the bigger shots, the cleaner shots in that fight. You had some big moments that could make you feel like you got the better highlights, but you should know at this point in your career that that's not enough to win, to depend on winning, especially in 3 rounds. Like, you have a very small window where you have to outperform your opponent. And if you only outperform them for like 3 out of 15 minutes, even if you really outperform them in those 3 minutes, you're not going to win. And you knocked him down once in 1 round, and that was enough to win that 1 round. But otherwise, landing a couple of bigger shots in a round while they double up on you for output, it's just bad fighting. And you have to wonder, is there anyone around Marlon Vera that can pull him aside and just be like, you lost this fight. This is your fault. You didn't try hard enough. You could win, but you didn't. You can't be mad at the judges. You can't be mad at, you have to do something more to win this fight. So anyway, this is just, it was a dull end to what had promised to be a thrilling card. For Zahabi, though, I think he called out Did he call out? No, Charles Jourdain called out Marcus McGee. Zahabi called for Sean O'Malley. I don't think he's getting that fight. It seems much more likely to me that fights with Davison Figueiredo or Song Yadong would be a lot more likely. I have to assume O'Malley Sandhagen is the fight people really would like to see. And it's a fight I would really like to see. So yeah, I would probably say book Ayman Zahabi versus Song Yadong, you know? See if he can keep this improbable rise going, or book him against Davison Figueiredo. He's another powerful fighter who doesn't necessarily work at a really high pace. Maybe Zahabi can just kind of slip his way by him and suddenly be a top 5 fighter. I would be. I'm happy to see it as a guy who wants to root for other old guys, even though Davison Figueiredo himself is also an old guy. So, yeah, improbable late career surge for Ayman Zahabi. And for Marlon Vera, just the latest in a long string of underperformances where it really feels like he could simply do more. For Vera, I suppose at the same time, he was ranked number 7. Let's see. Could book him against David Martinez. That'd be a good fight. Although it's 3 straight losses for Vera, so it's kind of weird, but Martinez also doesn't really have any profile in the division right now. So for Martinez, it would still be a huge get. That seems reasonable. You could book a Rob Font rematch, but I don't know. That doesn't really excite at all. Or I suppose you could book him against like Vinicius Oliveira. But yeah, somebody else mentioning Vera McGee would be dope. But I think I really like Charles Jourdain called out Marcus McGee. So I think that's a really strong fight to make for Jourdain coming off this win. Anyway, let's talk about Manon Firo, Jasmine Jasudavicius. And it is great to see Firo pick up a stoppage win and show off a little power in the process. She's obviously strong as hell. She's a big flyweight, but so much of her career has just been volume decision wins. She's got that real Holly Holm pushing your punches kind of form to him. Just or form to her rather. She, Manon Firo is not an exciting fighter to watch. So to see her sit down and meet Jasudavicius as Jasudavicius looked to charge in at her, because Jazz is always going to go right after somebody, try to grab him, try to tie him up, drag him to the mat, beat him up on the ground, and she's totally defenseless when she is marching in like that, leads with her face, slow-footed. So it's good to that's why I picked Firo, as I figured Firo could just move around her and outpoint her. But it's great to see Firo actually just absolutely crush her and put her away. So strong performance from Firo. Love to see it. Keeps her hanging around the elite of the division. Probably sets her up for what? Sets her up for, I guess, a fight. Well, let's see. Looking at what's booked, Macy Barber is booked. She's already fought Aaron Blanchfield. I mean, a win doesn't really set her up for a fight with Alexa Grasso, but the fight with Alexa Grasso is still the fight that she should be having right now. Otherwise, Yeah, no, that's really it. There's nothing else unless, the UFC's gonna do something really weird, like have her fight Wong Kong or something, which I'd be totally cool with, but it would be for Firo, she's got no reason to take that fight. Oh yeah. No, that's right. So other people mentioning, you know, Chad here mentioning she should fight Natalia Silva, and I was saying, well, Natalia Silva should get a title shot, but I forgot Shevchenko's fighting Zhang Weili. If I'm Natalia Silva, I would still just sit and wait for a title shot. You are more guaranteed it right now off of that Alexa Grasso win than you will ever be at any other time in your career. Even a win over Firo is not going to put you in any better place than that. So I would wait if I was her, but if she feels pressure to not wait, if she doesn't feel like she can wait, then yeah, Firo Silva is the fight to make. Otherwise, you do Firo Grasso or something like that. As for Jasudavicius, this has been an improbable run up the division. She could fight Alexa Grasso. Grasso looked really pretty bad against Natalia Silva. Did not look good not last time out against Shevchenko. So I wouldn't be against seeing Grasso, Jasudavicius. Otherwise, you could do let's see. She already beat Miranda Maverick, who's the only other person coming off a loss. You know what? You could do Jasudavicius Rose Namajunas too. I would be all right with that. So, yeah, you could also do the loser of Blanchfield Cortez. That does make sense, but there are unbooked fighters out there that need high profile fights. So, Grasso, Namajunas, those both feel like reasonable ideas if she doesn't want to wait around for somebody else to lose a fight. All right. That brings us to a bantamweight bout. Charles Jourdain, Davy Grant, and being team old guy like I am, I will just say I think this is still a really damned impressive win from Charles Jourdain. He kind of spammed his way through it, just throwing all the jumping knees, diving into the pocket, fighting a bit reckless, but that knee he caught Grant with was beautiful. And to tap him out like that, Grant is always a problem. Then he called out Marcus McGee, and I like that fight. This is a quality win for Jourdain. I think it deserves to get him a sniff of top 15 talent. The McGee fight seems like the right way to do that. You could also, let's see, looking at the rankings. Yeah, I mean, all the bottom three fighters in the top 15 are coming off of losses. So you could do Jourdain versus Oliveira, Jourdain versus Martinez, but Jourdain versus Font, Phillips, or McGee are all good fights. Any of those bottom 5, top 15 fights, they would all be fine by me. So great win for him. For Grant, he's always a scrapper. I'm always going to root for him. This was a really rough loss. But, he fights like a madman all the time. These are bound to happen to him every now and then. Might be time to hang him up. He's not getting any younger. But if he doesn't, I'm always going to want to see him fight. Let's see if there's another good. Is Hani Yaya still fighting? He lost to Victor Henry last year. I'd watch Yaya fight Davy Grant. Did they already fight? They've both been around for fucking ever. No, don't think they have. So I would I'd love to see that. Okay, somebody asked if I'd show off my new tattoo. Reason I didn't do a 6th round last week with Eddie is I spent pretty much the entire week last week getting a new tattoo. So here it is. You can see. That's my new sleeve. You can see the inside as well. And yeah, that was about, let's see, 25 hours of tattoo work over 1 week. And yeah, I'm actually fun story with that. The artist is he actually wants me to be his entry for next year's Seattle Tattoo Expo as a black and gray piece. It's somebody asking. It's the Tower of Babel as a representation, a fictional thing. It's not Tower of Babel never actually existed, but that's the idea. And so I'm going to be his entry for the juried exhibition, black and gray, for the Tattoo Expo next year. So I will actually have to show up and be there in person as like living artwork. Anyway, back to the fights. Talk about a lightweight bout now. Kyle Nelson, Matt Fvola, and the shop. It's Eddie Martinez, Iron Bull Tattooing. You can search Eddie Martinez Tattoo Seattle. Specializes in photorealism. He's an amazing artist, world-class tattoo artist. So, yeah. If you want to get a really, really, really nice tattoo, I cannot recommend that guy enough. He does amazing work, as you can see. Anyway, that brings us to a lightweight bout. Kyle Nelson, Matt Fvola, and this was an absolute shit show on every front. Kyle Nelson won this fight via TKO in the first round, and he won it by TKO convincingly enough that Dan Miragliotta was late, very clearly late on the stoppage when he stepped in to stop the fight, or when it looked like he stepped in to stop the fight, knowing that he's Tan Dan, knowing his history of how he stops fight. Knowing he's Tan Dan and knowing his history of how he stops fights, Jasmine Jasudavicius has to be feeling really pissed off right now, because she ate like the exact same amount of damage as Fvola and had half as much chance to recover before Miragliotta stepped in and stopped that one. But I do believe, knowing Tan Dan for his years of work, that he wasn't ever going to step in and stop that fight, and that he really did think that he heard the bell and stopped it. But he should have stopped it. This was a TKO. This was a TKO win for Nelson. And the thing that really bugs me about all of this is even, not just that it's an officiating fuck up, because too, I get it. The crowd is roaring in there. It's loud as hell. I can believe that Dan couldn't hear the bell, or knew that he couldn't hear the bell and was just trying to guess, basically, is what I would assume. But the thing that really pisses me off is not one judge gave that first round a 10-8. And I get that Matt Fvola was doing well in that round, that it was a competitive back and forth round, and that Nelson really only dominated for 30 seconds right at the end. He TKO'd the man. He put him out. He put him away. The fight should have been stopped. If a fight should be stopped, that's a 10-8 round. If you should have stopped a fight, I don't care how close the rest of the round is. If the ref should have reasonably stopped a fight, that should be a 10-8 round. If we have the idea of the 3 Ds and you need 2 of them, damage, dominance, duration, doesn't have to include duration. It is damage. That's damage and dominance right there. So really does bother me that Nelson didn't even get a 10-8 out of that. The fact that people thought Fvola even won a round of that fight, look, it got sloppy, it got wild, whatever. I thought Nelson won the whole thing. At least he didn't get robbed of a win. So I'm glad of that. As Chad says, you could do Nelson versus Dober. I'm always a little allergic to booking guys against each other off of the same card, but there's no question that would be a hell of a lot of fun. Otherwise, I'd be happy to see something like, Kyle Nelson versus Michael Johnson just came off a win over Daniel Zellhuber, or against Drakkar Klose. or even Alexander Hernandez is on a bunch of wins. So those all sound like good, solid fights to me. I'd watch all of them. And yeah, for Matt Fvola, like he battled his way back into it, so maybe he's not as washed as I feel like he is, but it still feels like these last few fights have just looked awful for Fvola. And somebody asking, H Gore asking, why don't I like same card bookings? So for years back in the Bloody Elbow days, I used to do fights to make every week, where I would write up my fantasy fight bookings every week, who should fight who next time out. And it's always easy when you're doing that to just look at the card in front of you that you just watched and say, oh yeah, these guys who won fights on this card in the same division should fight each other. And I just don't like it. It's just lazy. Like the UFC has 700 odd fighters under contract right now. There are options all up and down the roster. There's always going to be something else to look for. So I want to let other lazier people do the work of booking people off of the same card, where I actually want to like go through and try to find something else. So it's mostly just a personal, like, I'd rather see a little more work go into it. That's it. And yeah, noting, that's actually how the UFC books a lot of fights. Yes, the UFC is as lazy as I am trying to avoid. That's what I want to be. I want to give people like new possibilities, not just the ones right in front of them. So I'm trying to be a little creative here, have a little spark, a little life to the process. But yeah, Fvola, I don't know. It's hard to get excited about watching Fvola fight these days. He could fight Chase Hooper after Chase Hooper just got wrecked. I'd be all right with that. Yeah. Or I don't know, maybe Jared Gordon or something, but not really thrilling over the whole thing. All right. That brings us to our prelims. Drew Dober, Kyle Propolic, and I'm glad that kicking Kyle Propolic square in the dick as hard as he could and getting a point taken from him fired Drew Dober up enough to actually turn the clock back and put Propolic away the way that Dober really should. A prime Dober would have. Like, you're fighting a guy who really only got into the UFC to fill out regional Canadian fight cards. And you were just a few years ago a borderline elite action fighter in the lightweight division, barely scraping through a fight to get a win is not a good look for Dober. So I'm glad that the point being taken fired him up, but I don't know that, like, none of the rest of this fight made me feel like Dober's still right there in the prime. Yeah, so Drew Dober, I mean, honestly, I know I already mentioned like Kyle Nelson versus Michael Johnson, but Drew Dober versus Michael Johnson is that's actually a really sensible fight. If we're doing old, potentially washed guys, that would work for me for Drew Dober. Yeah, I think that's about it. Maybe I don't know. It's funny. Rafa Garcia is only 31, but he just has such old man energy that I assume he's nearly 40. So you could do like Dober versus Rafa Garcia or Dober versus Jamie Malarkey at this point. those are the kind of fights that I want to see Drew Dober in, which is to say there's not a lot of fights I really want to see Drew Dober in right now. The damage catching up to him big time, as OS Ghost here is mentioning. Like, that's no longer that. I don't want to see that. I don't want to see the late career scraping it out against the bottom of the lightweight division, Drew Dober. For Propolic, I mean, let's find the UFC should give him another fight, find the way to get the guy a win, put him in there against I don't know, Mitch Ramirez or Harry Hardwick or something like that. I don't know. And if he can't get those wins, put him in there against Kurt Hollabaugh. Why not? Whatever. But I don't know. Throw the guy a bone. Get him one more UFC fight because he got robbed here of a chance to really see this one out and compete. That brings us to a bantamweight bout. Aori Chilang against Cody Gibson, and goddamn, I did not expect Chilang to put him away like that. I mean, he does not get a lot of knockouts. He's not usually that big a hitter. Cody Gibson himself has always been really tough to put away. He's been submitted a couple times, but he's never been knocked out in his career. Feel really bad because they're talking like, oh, he just quit his job. He's doing this whole scientific approach. He's got his whole thing out. And he just went out and got fucking sparked. So rough for Cody Gibson. Fortunately for him, they're always hiring more teachers. So, I don't expect quitting his job is going to really be the horror show that it might be if he had quit a job like, I don't know, doing, engineering work or something and had that immediately filled behind him. So for Chilang, though, that's a solid win, but nothing that will get him out of his being in the sea of mid-card action bantamweights. Let's see. Hey, Victor Henry just picked up a win. That seems like a fight for Aori Chilang. Or, could be the next test for Rinya Nakamura. Or something like that. That all feels right. Maybe Elijah Smith. Those kind of feel, Chilang's a lot of fun, but this isn't a fight to like rewrite his career arc on that. Oh, somebody noting here, fight of the night, Dober Propolic. Hey, I'm glad to see Propolic got a little extra cash. He deserves that. And then performances of the night, Jourdain and Aori Chilang. All right, you know what? I'm here for it. Otherwise, let's see. Bruno Silva, Park Hyun-sung. My man, Bruno Silva. I am the president of the Bruno Silva fan club. I'm probably the only member of the Bruno Silva fan club as well. I think he's one of the most underrated talents in the UFC. He is in no way, shape, or form a plus athlete for flyweight, but he has great timing for counter shots, really gets comfortable in fights and finds openings and gets timing down, has good vision. And when he's in a fight against somebody that's not just clearly a huge level above him, he way overperforms every single time. So I love seeing him go out here against a bigger, better athlete in Park Hyun-sung and just put it all together for a really great performance after going up against, two super athletic top tier fighters in Monel Kopp and Joshua Van. Those were rough outings, but it was great to see him come back against another promising prospect and put together the kind of performances that he's made a habit of over the years. So great win for Bruno Silva. For Park Hyun-sung, I feel bad. He did not face any of the kind of competition getting into that Tatsuro Taira fight that would prepare him for that fight. and not even that would really prepare him for Bruno Silva either. And now, he needs to seriously step back in the division. I'd like to see Silva against, let's see. Oh, maybe could do Bruno Silva against Charles Johnson. That'd be pretty cool. And you could do Park against Ronaldo Rodriguez. That'd be a really good physical kind of matchup. So, all right. Otherwise, Danny Barlow, Jordan Santos, and man, Barlow, this has to be a wake-up call for him because he has all the physical tools to be a very good fighter. But this fight, he commanded this fight for big parts of it, but this fight came down to who wanted it more. And Jordan Santos just sat down, pushed forward, and took the fight away from him. He literally just wanted to win this fight more. And for Barlow, if you're going to let that happen to you, then, you're flaming out at the bottom end of the UFC, because most fighters in the UFC they'll see that and they'll want it more than you. Just knowing that you're going to quit, that you're going to doubt yourself and crumble, they will go after you. Everybody will go after you. Not a lot of fights that I really would care about either of them being in, but for Jordan Santos, I guess, who's somebody also at the bottom of the middleweight division? Just do him against Pulev, something like that. Or Rouston. Just somebody else looking to make something happen. Stephanie Luciano, Ravina Oliveira. Good fight from Luciano. Terrible fight from Oliveira. Oliveira just seemed like she didn't show. I can't imagine she boxes like that in the gym and beats people. So I don't know why she would come out and expect to just throw hands and beat somebody at this level. It's just, she resigned herself to slowly losing the same exchanges over and over and over again, to the point that Luciano also started out wrestling and out grappling her. Terrible fight from her. Solid performance from Luciano. Step Luciano up to, I don't know. Let's see. Palastri or Dainara, Bruna Bazil, any of those would be fine. Just keep her moving forward. Keep her climbing up the ladder at strawweight. Belgaroui. Is that how that can't be right? Anyway, Belgaroui. Yeah, Belgaroui against Bekoev. This is probably my most unexpectedly overperforming performance of the night. Belgaroui is a fighter I didn't really see a lot on his tape that made me super excited. He's huge. He's got some power. He's got some form, but I didn't really see him putting together the kind of fights that made me think, oh, he's going to jump in, handle pressure really well, fight hard against more experienced opponents, know how to stay in a fight. And dude fought long. He pivoted. He stuck to his fundamental tools. He worked his jab and his kicks constantly. Just beautiful performance. Love to see it in every single way. Absolutely the kind of performance I want to see out of him. Even look great stuff in takedowns. Just fantastic. Really made himself look like a guy who's been fighting for years as a very experienced kickboxer who could run up through middleweight in a hurry and take advantage of his experience and not have to slog through and learn how to fight MMA at a, already in it being in his mid 30s. So yeah, let's see. Get him in there against Robert Brishek. That'd be a great fight. Or get him in there against I mean, you could do like a Dushko Todorovic fight. That would also be cool. The fight that I want to warm him up for, really and truly, and I know this is kind of a waste of him, but it's a fight I want to see, and I want to see it like 3 times, is I want to see him fight Teba Gautier. So that is the fight that now I want to see those two go after it. Like, Gautier is still very raw. He doesn't have the depth of technique that Belgaroui has, but he's really good at managing distance, and he's a giant, and he hits like a truck. I'd be thrilled to see a fight like that. I know it's kind of a waste, but I want it. I just want it. All right. And then finally, Melissa Croden, Tynarl is Boa. Great fight from Croden. She started slow, but she built really well. Really knew when to bite down and go after it and push the pace on Lisboa and punish her. Love to see it at women's bantamweight. Being able to put somebody away and finish them makes her an instant threat in that division. So, Jocelyn Edwards is ranked. Put her in there against Croden right now. Like, there's no reason not to do a fight like that. There's not enough depth in that division for her to have to like test the waters and slow play it. The only other thing I could think of, if you really wanted to do a slow roll, is there even a fighter that's not? I guess as Montserrat Rendon would be like, or like Segula, but yeah. Anyway, yeah. On that note, I'm gonna wrap it up. As an overall event, this was a 3. It could have been booked better. I'm not going to go through rate all the fights, but it was the end of the fight, the end of the card didn't pay off. And when it doesn't pay off, that just kind of flushes all the good stuff down the toilet underneath it. But thanks everyone for tuning in. You can find a link, support us down below. And thank you all for tuning in. You can find me on Twitter at Zane Simon, over on Substack and Blue Sky at Zane Simon. And, appreciate y'all. We'll see you next time.